Hello, and welcome in to the most recent installment of the Stomp the Bus podcast. I'm Mark Harris here with Colton Dodgson, and we are coming to you for the first time in over a month after an ASU victory.
I didn't
One,
think it possible.
yeah, seriously, one that not everyone expected, that's for sure. ASU heads into the bye at 2-4 after beating then number 21 Washington 45-38. Crazy game. Emory Jones goes down in the first half, late first quarter, second quarter. I'll have to look that up, but early in the first half, and Trenton Bourguet comes in and plays wonderfully. Um, three touchdown passes for Bourguet. Valde had an excellent game, 23 carries for 111 yards and a touchdown. He also caught a touchdown. Elijah Badger continues to improve. 7 catches, 53 yards, and 2 touchdowns. It was just an excellent offensive showing, albeit against not that great of a defense, but definitely the win of the year so far, and a step in the right direction for Shaun Aguano.
Yeah, it's a tight race between this win and the NAU win, but I would say this one is just a hair better. And yeah, obviously the defense isn't great. That's what we talked about on our last show. Washington's defense, that is, isn't the best defensive unit in the country by any stretch. Probably bottom, I don't know, three and even the Pac-12. Not a great defense at all. But I think there is something to be said about being able to match this team score for score, because obviously Washington scores first,
Absolutely.
ASU matches with the field or responds with a field goal, scores 21 points in the second quarter. That really was all that they needed. But you look at the second half, and Washington and ASU goes back and forth. Obviously, the defense scored a touchdown in there as well.
A little bit
Um,
lucky, but hey, shit like that
yeah,
happens in college football.
as long as you take advantage of those
Yep.
opportunities, there's I really no reason to
Yep.
hold that against them. But I mean, I'm looking at the scoring chart here, and ASU 24, uh, 17 up on Washington, and they punt and then turnover on downs, and ASU is able to keep the pressure on Washington. ASU goes up 31-17. Washington comes back and scores. ASU scores another touchdown. Uh, Washington scores again. It's 38-31, and then ASU throws the interception. Washington ties it at 38. All of the pressure is on the offense late in that game. ASU scores 45, makes it 45-38. So I think there is something to be said about a backup quarterback coming into a game and obviously not playing the best defense that anybody's ever going to see, but being able to keep his team in a position to respond, and
Yes,
sort of go back
definitely.
and forth with a top 25 team and a really solid offense. You're going to hear some sounds from the game there. Still haven't figured out that ESPN issue that has plagued this show to this point.
Damn you,
But
Bristol.
yeah, I think there's something to be said that Trenton Bourguet was able to come into this game and sort of go toe to toe with Michael Penix, who
Yeah.
um, is somebody who I was watching the UCLA Washington broadcast. Obviously, this probably isn't the case now. Not that the recent woes of Washington falls on Penix very much. Um, it's not his fault or anything like that. But one of the broadcasters for that game, I can't remember who it was, said that they would cast a Heisman vote for Penix.
Right.
And
Yeah.
granted, that was 2 weeks ago. A lot has changed in 2 weeks for Washington, but
But
I
he
mean, it
wasn't
was
bad in this
impressive.
game. Like,
No, no, 3 touchdowns, 300 yards. He threw the pick six, but it's impressive offensively speaking. It's a very impressive showing to go toe to toe like this with not only a conference opponent, but a top 25 team. So
yeah.
I was wrong, very wrong about my virtual lock going to Washington. I have been sort of jaded by the recent struggles of ASU, and that came back to bite me. I'll wear it. I did call the over. That was my easiest play of the day. Um, but I will own my pessimism on the side of ASU. How's that,
Hey,
Mark?
I get it. You were not alone based on the attendance of this game. Although it was pretty freaking loud in the fourth quarter. Like the people that were there making noise. But
Yeah, I was watching a stream because obviously you can't get the Pac-12 anywhere,
right.
and it looked like a high school game in a very small. Well, no, because I think small towns care about high school football a lot, but a very,
I
very
get your point, yeah.
poor turnout. My analogy kind of went off the rails there, but that's okay. Um, the turnout from my Stream East feed did not look very impressive. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. Doesn't help that it was fall break too. So
Yeah,
huge.
that's true.
The
That's a
student
good
section
point.
has been pretty good this year. Not not in this last game, but fall break. And I mean, it going into the game, like on Friday of last week, this was a 1-4 team that had been blown out for, you know, basically 4 games in a row. So, like, I'm not going to blame the fans that much.
Well, they did lose to a MAC juggernaut.
Exactly. That was yeah. And the home game before that, they got like their doors blown up off by Utah. So, um, they had to prove it, and they did prove it. Like they like even like this was not a fluke win. You know, I think both teams had the same amount of turnovers. And ASU, you know, like UW scored 38 points, and like look, they still had a lot of success against ASU. But one thing that ASU did not do is they never really got beat deep the entire game. And UW has some really good receivers. I mean, Roma Dunze had 9 catches for 115, but Jalen McMillan 4 catches for 25 yards. That's really not that bad.
Yeah, with
Jalen
an
Cole, two
average of
catches for
yeah,
15.
the the average to at 6.3.
Yeah,
That's really good. I mean, Rome Dunze's average was 12.8 yards per catch.
yeah. I
That's
mean,
a
he's
first
good.
down every time he catches the ball. So
Yeah,
that's less than ideal. And then, I mean, Washington's leading rusher. Oh my God. Washington's leading rusher, Cameron Davis, 9 carries for 77 yards. The dude was averaging 8.6 yards per
yeah.
touch. So maybe maybe they're selling out to keep the passing game in front of them to the point that Washington was able not quite they're not quite the rushing juggernaut that Eastern Michigan is, but they were able to get a lot of what they wanted. Richard
Yeah.
Newton, another guy who averaged 10 yards a carry. So a lot of chunk plays, or I guess average chunk plays. I mean,
Right.
Devin Cook
Right.
had a 26-yard catch. Romeo Dunze had a 25-yard catch, 17-yard catch for Taj Davis. A lot of chunk plays here. But again, I mean, it was a shootout. And the
Right.
defense, they scored a touchdown in this game, which was
That was the
more
difference.
than we could have asked.
In,
So
in
exactly,
terms of the scoreboard, that was the difference in the game. You know.
exactly. And I think the story of this game is just Trenton Bourguet. I talked about it earlier, but how impressive it was that he was able to come in
He
and
was
not,
making good throws.
yeah, and not crack under this pressure. Not
No,
when the
not at
game
all.
was tied in the fourth quarter, 38-38. He's able to keep his head on straight and walk down. I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but that's just what you get on this show. It's sort of involuntary excellence, but he's able to lead the team down the field. I don't know who scored that. Oh, pass complete to Elijah Badger for 2-yard touchdown. He's able to throw that touchdown at the end of the game, 4:35 left, and obviously they forced the turnover on downs. ASU punts again, but then they get the I don't even know what happened on that play.
It was
The
a bad snap by Washington that drove it
Oh,
all the way.
okay.
And like,
I saw loss of 36 on
yeah,
my phone, and I was
it
like,
was
"What?"
like people kept trying to pick it up and no one could actually grab the ball, so it just kept
Oh,
moving
okay.
backward.
So
Uh,
it was like the classic Frank Reynolds greased watermelon in the
yeah,
public pool.
it was. It did rain actually a little bit in this game. Like it sprinkled for a good like
I
five
saw that
minutes.
it looked cloudy.
Yeah, no, I was in the stadium and
We're gonna
the
get a
computer
copyright
gremlins are
strike
at it
if I keep
again.
playing these.
Um, I was at the stadium and you could see just a huge, just giant wall of gray clouds rolling in from from the east side, and a little bit dipped over the stadium, but luckily it was nothing too bad. And like I would have been pissed if there was like a lightning delay or something.
Mark, your use of imagery there was impeccable. I feel like I was in the stadium.
There you go. Hey, that's
Yeah.
why you go to the Cronkite School of Journalism. Okay, you can make good descriptions of the weather.
Mark Harris, is right up there with Matthew Berry and or Matt Berry. I don't
My
know what he
favorite
is.
ASU personality.
And who else is even prominent from there? But regardless, you're up there with those people. You're on the Cronkite Mount Rushmore. Your
Right, of
bearded
course.
face is right up there.
Definitely. My bearded face. Uh, I wanted to shout out. I mentioned that ASU never really got beat deep, and a few of the reasons was Roe Torrance really played well. He had some good pass breakups, and Isaiah Johnson also played really well on the other side. Like you have to cover those guys. Like you can drop the defense all you want, but you have to have people who can actually execute. And I mean, Roe Torrance was just like on these guys like glue. The people that he was covering, and had a really nice pass breakup. I think they were throwing like a post route, and he was able to knock it away. And
Blake.
I mean, I would have, because I don't think maybe Roe Torrance did play against USC, but I know that he was injured. So
He definitely missed Eastern Michigan. I know
yeah.
he missed Eastern Michigan because he got hurt in the Oklahoma State game. I don't remember if he came back for USC though. I'm trying
No,
to
it says
see.
he
Oh,
was at
Jordan Clark.
No,
That's who.
he played USC. He says he had 6 solo tackles, so
Okay.
definitely played him.
Yeah. All right.
But he's a good player, man. Like they were really lucky to get him. I mean, he's like
Blake Masters wants to ban all
was at
abortion.
Auburn.
I keep wanting to look at this box score and break this down, but every time I do, we get political interference.
Is it on ESPN or is it like you
Yeah,
can
it says
other site?
ESPN. I have it on mute.
Or you could like
Anytime
pulled up on your phone. Although I
yeah,
mean,
I'll do
we don't really
that's a
need the
good
box
idea.
score. But yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, speaking of James Madison is ranked. Sorry, that just came on my
Yeah.
phone when I went on here.
Yeah.
That was pretty crazy. But anyway, that just popped up while I'm trying to pull this up. This is the first time I think actually Oklahoma State and USC, but one of the few times where you don't have to go to the FBS or the Pac-12 tab to find an ASU score. It's always nice when they play a ranked opponent because then you can just click NCAA football and you're right there. But yeah, Penix didn't throw for a touchdown in this game.
No.
That's
Now
kinda
UW
weird.
did have 5 rushing touchdowns.
I think I said he threw for 3 touchdowns earlier, and that was my bad.
Yeah. No.
He attempted 53 passes in this
Yeah.
game.
I mean, UW was trailing most of the game. Like,
yeah, that's bonkers. I think I was looking at Trenton Bourguet when I said Penix's stat line, but
yeah.
only
Emory
5.1
Jones.
yards. Yeah.
Emory Jones, before he got injured, I mean, 7 of 9 for 59 yards. They were marching down the field, so he was playing well too.
Yeah, and it's not like Bourguet, just based on, his numbers, and obviously I didn't get to watch a whole lot of it. Shout out to the Pac-12 network. But I mean, just looking at these numbers, 8.7 yards on average per completion. He only threw for 182 yards on 15 of 21, which is obviously a great completion percentage. All through, it's not like he had any deep bombs or anything, but he was just making.
He had one that was like it was like a third. He had like 2 fairly deep bombs to Brian Thompson, who had 3 catches, 78 yards. Pretty good game for him.
Oh yeah, 26 yards a catch. Okay, 38-yard catch. I guess that would be a deep play, but it seems like Bourguet's approach was a little more methodical. Just go through your reads, hit the guy that's open. It wasn't like he was trying to do too much. He was playing within the game plan, which is always good. You run into those quarterbacks who try to do too much, and you're in trouble. But I don't know. Penix is. I mean, when you throw the ball 33 or you throw the ball 53 times and you're only averaging 5.9 yards per completion. I mean, it's crazy that he was still. I don't know. That just seems like that passing attack was aided by a chunk play here and there. It doesn't. I don't know. It's just interesting looking at those numbers.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that stood out to me about Bourguet is he really had some accurate throws in there. Like both the deep plays to Brian Thompson were really well thrown. And his first touchdown to Elijah Badger in the back of the end zone, that was really nice. Like he like layered the ball over two defenders, and I think he was getting hit at the time too, and just dropped it in the bucket to Badger. That was just like dang, like he may be a backup technically, but I like I mean, look, Aguano's been talking about it. He talked about it today. He talked about it after the game. Like, there's a QB competition now. Like, that's
Yeah.
how well Bourguet played. And Emory Jones might get what's the it's Wally pipped.
Yeah.
Yeah, and because I don't think
Or
Jones would have.
Alex Smith.
Right,
Yeah.
and in San Francisco with Kaepernick. Yeah, that's a
But
good call because yeah.
Sorry, what were you gonna say?
Oh, nothing. But
Okay, Mark.
it's interesting. Um,
No, definitely. And I really like that. I think so often coaches get caught up. I think you see it more at the NFL level, which obviously maybe this isn't that applicable, but it's kind of coach speak in general, where coaches will, commit to a guy and won't acknowledge an open controversy or won't acknowledge that, or like an open, not controversy, I think that's the wrong word, but an open competition. Um, and won't if I think a lot of the time coaches won't give fans credit for seeing something. It's almost like coaches think that there's this this lens that comes with 20 years of working in football where you're able to see a level of play that an average fan isn't able to see. But I mean, when you're watching these games, I think any football fan can identify solid quarterback play. Be like, wow, that was a good throw, something like that, right? So in this instance, Shaun Aguano just openly saying, yeah, he looked good. He put some pressure on Emory Jones. This is definitely a competition. I think that old, you're going to hear that old football cliche that you get on every, Instagram bio or whatever it is, the iron sharpens iron or whatever. There's definitely some strength and conditioning coaches in Division II that have that on their shirt. The guys that have to hold the coaches back on the sideline have iron sharpens iron, something like that. But I mean, that's what you want to see, right? You want to see, especially with the program in the state that it's in. This isn't some 5-star guy coming in. These are two. I mean, Bourguet was a 5th-string walk-on, right? Like,
yeah.
Emory Jones is a transfer from Florida. Like these aren't guys with huge pedigrees. Obviously, I mean, playing in the SEC is great and everything. But what I'm trying to say is, with the program in the state that it's in, this is exactly the type of mentality you need. I feel like it would be easy for Aguano to just stick with things as they were, right? He inherited this mess. This is Emory Jones' job. When he comes back, he's the starter. There is no competition. He could have gone down that road, but he's not playing it safe. And I think that's going to bring out the best. Obviously, Bourguet was ready to go. And I think that's going to bring out the best in Emory Jones. I don't think he was ever really – he doesn't seem like the type of guy that would be complacent or take any of this for granted or anything like that. But I think maybe this gives him a bit of a jolt, and it shows Trenton Bourguet that this isn't set in stone. You can play more if you continue to perform like this. So I guess that's a really long-winded way of saying I'm glad Aguano isn't giving us the typical coach speak that we're used to hearing, and he's not just inheriting a mess, blaming it all on the former regime, and getting through the season. And I think that's typical, and that leads into what we were going to talk about later with Aguano. But I've been really impressed with what I've seen so far, and apparently the players are too.
Yeah, the players. Nesta Jade Silvera after the game was like, "This guy's like the best coach I've played for," something like he was very complimentary of Aguano, and you saw it on the sideline, man. Like it's night and day difference between him and her. Excuse me, Herm Edwards
Yeah.
was like stone cold, like dispassionate back there, and just like jotting things down on his little notepad after they get their like 5th false start penalty of the game.
Yeah. Do you think he was
Aguano's
just tally marking false starts on that notepad?
that I mean, maybe
Just
there was a lot to mark down. There was a
yeah.
lot to mark down. Uh, but anyway, Aguano's animated. It seems like there's less puzzling clock decisions. It was pretty common with Herm Edwards, even when the team was like doing relatively good a few years ago. Um, those were present, and I haven't seen too many of those yet with Aguano. Who knows? I mean, it's not like this guy hasn't. He's experienced coaching for a long time in terms of managing a clock and all that in high school. So
And he never had a 20-year gap.
absence, yeah, exactly. Imagine that. I mean, imagine hiring someone who hadn't been in coaching for like a decade for a job. That would be crazy. Uh,
Yeah.
put your program in a
It
bad
would be
spot.
borderline malpractice.
In borderline. Full
I
on.
actually I can't talk. I liked the hire when it happened.
I did
I'm
not.
one of those people that's like, whoa, this is something that doesn't seem familiar, so it must be innovative. Even when there's a reason it's not familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, it wasn't as big of a disaster as people thought it would be, but it also we've litigated the Herm era. But
Yeah. Let's not go back. We can only go forward, Mark.
exactly. Um, so yeah, but what makes this even more interesting in terms of the quarterback battle is you've got a bye week now, so you have a lot of time to really reevaluate the situation if you want to see how healthy Emory Jones is, um, who looks better at practice. And I mean, if you're Bourguet, you have to have momentum. I mean, that's just he played an incredible game. I know he had a pick, but he was converting on third downs, like not making some tough throws, very accurate. It was impressive to watch. Like, look, I heard about Bourguet. A lot of the like prep people in Arizona talked about him, and
Where's
maybe
he from again?
what
Where's he from again in
he's from
Arizona?
Marana. Or it's either Marana or Marana. It's just outside of Tucson.
Oh, I have
I don't
no
know
idea
exactly how
what
it's
that is.
pronounced. Um, showing my out of stateness. But
Yeah, I really don't even know what that is, so it's all good.
yeah, there you go. But yeah, I think it's just north of Tucson. So obviously that's maybe less likely that he'd go to ASU, but came as a walk on and he's been here for a while and been a backup and not always the second string backup either. Like he's been sitting behind people, but I mean he again, like I just can't stop talking about how well he did. Like he just was fantastic. Uh and like the offense, it was like it just moved really well. Like there's no they almost never had any like just like terrible drives. They did have some punts, but just a really well played game. And look, with you have Stanford and Colorado coming up with the way this team played again,
Yeah,
like even with the way they played against Washington, and you throw in the fact that they hung with USC for a half, you know, and
I think yeah, I agree with you. Sorry, I'll let you finish your point. I was just thinking about Stanford.
my point is that if they keep playing at this level, then they should be able to beat Stanford and Colorado and get to 4-4.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do think that this offense is going to have to put up points, not 45 or I guess 38. The defense scored a touchdown. Maybe not 38 points. Yeah, maybe in the neighborhood of 28-31, something like that against Stanford. I
Yeah.
think Stanford's had some terrible luck, and their schedule early on has been just an absolute
So
bear.
oh,
I mean,
okay.
they
So
get
they
Colgate out of the gate. We know how good they are.
right.
Yeah, not them. I'm just kidding. But what were you gonna say?
So well, in their last game, they lost. They lost at the very end to Oregon
I was
State, which was a
watching that
crazy
game for
play.
yeah, that I
If you
mean,
haven't seen that, look it up. It's
yeah,
crazy.
that play was nuts. I watched that entire game, and I'm not going to disclose why. But I mean, I'm looking at their
It's a
schedule
good
here:
game.
USC, Washington, Oregon, and then they play Oregon State, right? So 0-4 in the conference so far, but I mean, they play three of
Yeah.
the top five teams in the conference right out of the gate, right? And they score points. I mean, we're not looking at great defenses. We've talked about that ad nauseum to
Yeah, their
this point,
defense isn't good.
but
But yeah.
I don't like their offense is solid. I think Stanford, Tanner McKee is pretty is a pretty good quarterback, and then the kid who broke his leg last year and came back had a game
Oh
against
yeah.
Oregon State. Bryson Tremaine,
Yeah.
he looks solid, and I think Stanford's going to put up some points against ASU's defense. So I mean, they obviously get the bye week. They get some time to figure out what they want to do at quarterback. But whatever they do, they're going to need to score points because I think Stanford is going to score some points on this
Yeah.
defense for
Yeah,
sure.
for sure. And
And where's that
Stanford is
game at?
definitely like that'll be a really interesting game in terms of like a barometer for the rest of the season. Because if ASU loses to Stanford, then it's like, okay, like congrats on beating Washington, but you're probably gonna go 4-8 because you'll beat Colorado and then you'll just beat one of U of A, Oregon State, Washington State, and UCLA. But if
Yeah,
ASU wins, let's just say they win by like a touchdown and just like it's just a convincing win, even if it's not like a blowout. If they win a game like that, you win whatever 7 to 10 points, um, and they look good. Then it's like okay, like this team can get rolling, and if they get to 3-4, you know you have Colorado next. That I guess it's like sure you like every game is theoretical. You can lose that game, but it's just Colorado's
not if
very
you're playing
bad.
Colorado. That's a bye week.
Yeah, they're very bad. The only hope is if they get some interim head coach bump like we have, but Colorado's interim head coach was their offensive coordinator, who's like terrible, and he was at Minnesota, and when Minnesota fired him, their offense got way better. So it's like I don't know. I think Aguano is a really good interim head coach. Like the guy at Wisconsin, Jim Leonard, like he's an interim head coach, but that's kind of the guy they want to just be the head coach, you know? So like not every interim head coach is the same. Um,
Right.
so anyway,
Um,
but
yeah. I mean
Colorado
that game.
stinks.
Yeah, that game is in Palo Alto too.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm just thinking back. I can't remember if this was the last time they played in Palo Alto. The Bryce Love game,
Oh yeah.
was that the last
Or
time they played in Palo Alto?
I think so. No, that was our senior year, so that was 2017.
Yeah.
Um,
Regardless, not a lot of great memories
it's
with
a it's
Palo
a
Alto.
weird place to play.
Yeah, it's not like it's the. I mean, people show up. I guess it depends on when the game is going to
Uh,
be, too.
they really
When I was watching that Oregon State game, they like the stands aren't full. You're not getting like just everyday people coming in to watch these games. There's not like a huge
right.
Stanford football culture, but you will get like a student section. You will get some. But
Right. No,
what I'm
there'll be
saying
people
is,
there.
it's not
Yeah.
necessarily like a home field advantage, but there is something weird about playing.
Well,
I agree with you.
it's weird to go to an environment and there's like no crowd noise, you know? Like that's I feel like if you're a college football player, you kind of expect like to go on the road for it to be like Oklahoma State. I mean, USC isn't like the world's biggest home field advantage, but still like there are people there making noise.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a coliseum. Like that's intimidating by itself.
yeah. But then you go to Stanford and it's like, it'll probably be I think it's like a mid-afternoon game, so there will be some people there, but it's not going to be anything. Um,
It's probably a graduate student's thesis. or a master's student's thesis on the psychological impact that 20% of a stadium's capacity can have on an opposing football team.
I bet someone's written that before.
And it's a
And if they haven't done it at Stanford, they did it at one of the Ivy League schools or like at Northwestern or Duke.
Yeah, I
Like
think
that.
Stanford just uses like we'll randomly throw little tests in there that students are running as like, you know, a research or like a dissertation or something like that. So that might be what's going on. There's always something deeper. Stanford's playing chess while all of us are playing checkers. So
they were. They suck now.
no,
So.
not in terms of team success, but I'm saying like there's something else going on there, you know.
I think Stanford is I think if they're with Colorado being the only teams that only Power 5 teams that also haven't beaten a Power 5 team, but I'm not sure about that.
Oh, currently?
Yeah, I think maybe Northwestern's in that mix too, but
yeah, it's unfair. I mean, they should have beaten Oregon State. That last play was the play of a lifetime. Like that should have been a win. But I mean,
but they also caught Oregon State with the backup though. So
right, the third stringer. I'm pretty sure the backup.
Oh, he was third string.
I'm pretty sure the kid that played was a third stringer, and he looked good.
Well, there you go.
Because who is their starter? I can't think of his name. He got hurt. Nolan got hurt in the Utah game, and then I'm pretty sure the backup to Nolan got hurt at some point, maybe early in the Stanford game, and then the third string kid came.
Yeah. So one thing about Stanford is the bye week that we're off, they go to Notre Dame. So the thing with that is they could get beat up in that game against a team with a better roster, especially on the lines of scrimmage. And so ASU would have the advantage at that point because guess what? You just had a bye week after a like offensive game against Washington. So ASU could definitely be more fresh in that game. And, you know, injuries or not, Stanford's probably coming into this game on a 5-game losing streak. So it's just.
That's a good point. And for whatever reason, they're rivals. I've never really figured that out.
I think it's just some old school thing.
Yeah, I don't know. But speaking of, I have to pick that game on my football pool. Am I going? I'm going Notre Dame. But I don't know why they're rivals. I'm in Matt's family's football pool, and I didn't even know you had to power rank your picks until like week 4.
Oh gosh, yeah, that's the worst. But yeah, I mean, look, Aguano. Here's what I will say with the Stanford game coming up. I feel like if they lose that game, then Aguano has no chance of becoming coach. Because think about it. If you lose that game, then in order to go to a bowl game, you would have. And for me, I don't think Aguano has a chance of becoming coach unless they go to a bowl game. And that's like the low bar. Like, I think for him to like prove it that he could actually like, we should make this hire and go his way. And I think Aguano's been awesome, by the way. Like, but I think you have to go to a bowl game and he has to get like a few good recruits to come in, you know?
Yeah,
you have to be able to salvage some kind of class, even with the interim tag on. Maybe he, again, like we talked about, having all the recruits at practice, like maybe he'll stay on staff anyway, you know, and that would be fantastic if that happens. But
I mean, we talked about it a little bit even like before he took over and everything was, I mean, the running game and the running backs have been this team's strength for the past 3 or 4 years. And I don't think that's a coincidence that correlates with Shaun Aguano joining the staff. Definitely should have a role on this team if he's not the head coach. But I agree with you. He's kind of fighting an uphill battle, and that's unfortunately the landscape of, you know, an interim coach, unless you're somebody that has been sort of anointed a coach in waiting or something like that. But that's obviously not the case here. So in order to get them to forego a coaching search with names that will now include, I mean, Deion Sanders, Matt Rule, some pretty big names in this cycle, he's gonna have to overperform and do it not only on the field, but like you said, demonstrate that he has some pedigree when it comes to convincing recruits to join the program. I mean, he should definitely stay on this staff. I just don't know if he's going to have enough time or be given a genuine shot, regardless of, the letter, which we're going to talk about.
Or if he, if they want to keep him, but he just takes a job somewhere else because someone is impressed with what they saw here,
That's a good point. That could happen too. Maybe it's not, a Pac-12 school. Maybe he goes somewhere smaller and climbs the ranks or whatever it may be. But this is an audition for
100%
everywhere. Like, if it's not ASU, it could very well be somewhere else. And I think ASU has to be cognizant of that too and understand that, okay, I mean, if he performs well, exceeds expectations, and proves that he could be a head coach in college football of a college football team and lead a program, we're not going to be able to necessarily retain him. That might not be an option. He might get to go somewhere else.
Right.
So there's a lot of options to weigh. I think it's going to be extremely interesting with some of the names that are being floated, and obviously Matt Rule being fired. I think it was yesterday or the day before. Just adds another huge fish to that pond. So Shaun Aguano, great guy, has the support of Arizona high school football coaches and his players.
Yeah.
But it's gonna be an uphill battle regardless, I think.
Yeah. So yeah, but that's why I think the bowl game is something that's like the lowest threshold for me, because they can go 4-2 in these next 6 games if possible.
Yeah, definitely. I think obviously we're gonna, every time we do this show, we're gonna talk about it's it's weird to talk about this with a 2-4 team, but with the standard of postseason play set so low in college football, I mean, it's gonna be this is the season. This game is the season. But more so, it's not just this game is this season. This game is the season is more of this game could possibly decide the future of this team.
Yes.
Because if they go out and win this game against, let's just say hypothetically they beat Stanford. Okay, Aguano's case becomes stronger. His resume becomes a little stronger. What happens if they go out and beat UCLA?
Dude, and UCLA will be, no matter what happens with them, they'll probably still be in the top 25.
Well,
by the time we play.
They have a bye this week too.
Yeah,
so
and there's a chance
to survive 1 week. I don't know who they play off the top of my head, but
yeah, and there's a chance UCLA comes into that game maybe with just 1 loss, or they're still undefeated. And even if they play a really good game against
they have Oregon.
Yeah, so that'll be tough for UCLA. That'll be a good game. But if they've won 2 in a row, I bet Sun Devil Stadium will be a lot more full, especially if you have a 1-loss or unbeaten UCLA team coming in. I think that would be the best atmosphere at Sun Devil Stadium I guess since last year. They had some good atmospheres last year. Not amazing, but some were pretty good. I think the USC game, that was a pretty well attended game. U of A was full, but I mean, U of A is always it's always going to be full for that game. But
I feel like this is a really interesting season, and not for any sort of, otherworldly success on the field. It's not interesting for the same reason that Utah's season last year was interesting, right? Because they had this crazy success and did what they did.
It's interesting in the same way Washington State's season was interesting last year, because they fired their coach, albeit for different reasons.
For the mask mandate, or the vaccine. Was it the vaccine?
The vax requirement, because Nick Rolovich.
I remember that.
Shot.
Jaden
but then they started to play a lot better as the season kept going along. They finished 7-5, and they're like, well, maybe let's just keep the interim head coach. And looks like it was the right decision for them. Jake Dicker, they're 4-2. Beat Wisconsin on the road, almost beat Oregon.
Should have beat Oregon.
Yeah.
That game was a collapse.
And they probably had the second best defensive performance against USC all season. Holding that USC team to 30 points through a college football game where you get more possessions, like that's impressive.
Yeah, and that game was semi-competitive until late
Yeah, I
too.
was able to watch that game, but
I remember it being like I think Washington State even had a lead at one point, but I want to say it was
yeah.
never out of hand. And I mean 30, I think it was 30-17, right? Or maybe 30-14.
30 to 14, I believe.
Something like
But
that.
yeah,
And I mean, obviously that doesn't look super competitive, but
two-score game.
Wa-
Two-score game.
yeah, point being, Wazoo obviously made the right choice there. And I mean, it's not unheard of. There's a precedent for it, but it's interesting in the sense that, each game could very, very well alter the path that this program, or maybe they already have their
Right.
path
Yeah,
set in place.
that's true.
Maybe they already know what they're going to do. Maybe Shaun Aguano doesn't have a shot. They're not going to give it to him regardless of what he does. Or maybe they don't. And Shaun Aguano goes out, does something really special. Maybe they only go 6-6, or somehow go 7-5, whatever it could be. And he really forces their hand. There's a lot of different angles here that don't necessarily pertain to contending for a Pac-12 championship, but I think are pretty interesting. And I didn't expect that to be the case coming in. I was pretty down on this season. But I mean, when you have a guy as likable and as competent as Shaun Aguano is, it makes the conversation very interesting.
Yep, totally. And like I think we talked about this last week too, is you had a weird schedule where it was just so front loaded, where you're playing 4 of the top 5 teams you play in the first 6 games, right? And pretty much everyone other than UCLA.
Right.
So
I
it's
wish we
just
would have got Eastern Michigan when we hit our stride.
yeah. Hey, you know what? The Eastern Michigan game turned out to be a very good thing, because if we don't lose that game, I still think we have Herm Edwards right now.
Yeah, but maybe it's delayed by like a week.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they honestly, like, we'd probably be 1-5, and we're entering the bye week. This would probably be when it would have happened.
Yeah.
Anyway, but it didn't, and we lost to Eastern Michigan and got our asses kicked. But yeah, I feel like what you mentioned about them already having someone in mind no matter what. I feel like if that's going to be anyone, that would be Kenny Dillingham at Oregon, who their offense just looks good. Like,
Yeah.
I know it was against U of A, and I think U of A has the worst defense in the Pac-12. Well, either them or Colorado, one of those two. But like, we're like, oh, Washington defense is bad, ASU's defense is bad. Like, they are, but like, there's like U of A is even below that. Like, it's really bad. And
Mark, are they bad?
they're pretty bad. Yeah. Some might say terrible.
Ooh.
Terrible.
But yeah, it's crazy to see where Oregon is now after that opening game. I did not think.
I mean, it's Georgia. Like,
I know, and Georgia's an absolute like wagon, right? But I mean, Mizzou gave them a scare a couple weeks ago. It's college football. There's going to be more volatility than.
Well, and I just feel like in a game like that, like a team like Georgia, they're going to be at their 100% peak game.
Right, and it's in the
in
Falcons.
at Missouri, like
no, yeah, okay, that makes sense. I thought we were still
that,
talking about
like,
week one.
We've kind of seen this with Ohio State over the years, where like they play their best game of the season against Michigan, and they kick the crap out of like a Michigan team that's like ranked 6th in the country, but then they also lose to like Iowa that year, or that year they lost to Purdue, and it's like
the Rondale Moore game.
Yeah. And it's like you can't just these teams, even like the best teams, like they're not going to be at their 100% like peak performance level every single game, you know? And I mean, so, but it's still a bad, like, like they still lost 49-3, and that was a bad performance. And I guess, I mean, they almost lost to that being Oregon. They almost lost to Wazoo, but they were able to pull that out. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind Dillingham, because like obviously Aguano, you mentioned that he got the letter of support from the Arizona High School Coaches Association, and I mean that is so like that's a huge feather in his cap,
Definitely,
even though it's not been on
huge.
the field,
and especially if you got to look at if let's say, you know, Ray Anderson, if he's involved in the next coaching search, which I don't know why he wouldn't be if he's still around.
Yeah, but from what I've like listened to in terms of like podcasts and stuff, like he's involved, but he is not. It doesn't seem like he's like the final decision maker on it.
Yeah, right. But
which he shouldn't be.
Point being, what I'm trying to say is if Ray Anderson and Michael Crow and whoever else is involved in this decision has a list, a sort of a wish list for their next head coach, and one of the items on that list is re-emphasizing in-state recruiting, I don't think you're going to find a guy better suited to check that box than Shaun Aguano, and this letter is further proof of that.
Yeah.
Right? All of these coaches supporting this guy. I mean, those conversations and that communication is going to be seamless. And that pipeline, who knows what could happen with in-state recruiting after that. So I think if there's anything that if Shaun Aguano has any A++ on his resume that he is going to sort of have a significant advantage over other candidates I think it's got to be the in-state recruiting.
Yeah.
It's got to be that element,
well,
which is huge. So
I kind of agree with you because what I wanted to bring up is Shaun Aguano obviously is good. Like if he was given the full-time head coaching job, he would do pretty well recruiting Arizona. I think we can both agree on that. But I think with Dillingham, who I was talking about earlier, like he is connected to Arizona. Like he's from Scottsdale. I think he went to Chaparral or however it's pronounced. But went to that high school, was a GA at ASU, and like he's connected to some of the boosters. He's recruited Arizona before. Like he has recruiting connections. So like if they don't choose Aguano and go with Dillingham would cover a lot of that. Like he would be a good replacement in that space.
Yeah, that's a good point. I could see that too.
And I was listening to Brad Sesmat's podcast. I saw this on Twitter, and he mentioned in his pod that Dillingham would come to ASU if they offered it to him. So like that's interesting. He also mentioned it. And again, this is from his podcast, so he's the one reporting it, but also mentioned that like once like some of the high school quarterbacks who had been like Arizona high school quarterbacks who are elsewhere in the country, like some of them are much more open to transferring here with Aguano here. And I mean that makes sense. Like I'm sure they all know him, and like Aguano, he just seems like such a nice guy too. Like it's very rare that you have like a college football coach who is like seems like a genuinely nice guy, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that all comes from the high school roots. You know, like he's a former high school football coach,
he's a
high school
teacher. Yeah.
Yeah, like I think that that patience and that genuine like passion for what he's doing, I think all comes from that. And that's a trait that is you're not going to find that in a lot of other coaches, I don't think.
Yeah.
That's what I think is so unique about this guy is his background is so much different from other coaching candidates that you're going to run into, you know, like
right.
The path that he's taken to get to this point where his name is even in the running is pretty uncommon, right? And I think that's where you get a lot of this humility and a lot of this. He seems very down to earth. He seems like he has high expectations, but he's not Urban Meyer about him. And I don't know. I think he's a very interesting
He's very much
guy.
not Urban Meyer.
Yeah.
Unless there's some things we find out about. But.
I don't think there will be any Urban Meyer revelations coming out. But yeah, I don't know. I really like the guy. I hope he gets a fair shot. I hope there isn't a decision already made.
Yeah.
Because he could easily end up somewhere else. I think I wouldn't be shocked if he gets an opportunity somewhere else. Yep. If not as a head coach, maybe as like an OC or something under a different staff. But I don't know. Hopefully they can retain him, and if he earns it, if he continues to perform like this, I don't see what the issue is. And I mean, furthermore, there's even an argument that could be made for sticking with Aguano, giving him sort of like that, let's see how it goes. And then once you get some clarity, obviously don't use him as like a stopgap or anything like
Right.
that.
Clarity on the NCAA. Yeah.
Right. Get some clarity on that. If he doesn't perform, then you can go in a different direction when you don't have that cloud over your program.
Right.
But it's a win-win for ASU, right? I mean, if he doesn't perform, it's like, okay, we're kind of in this dark period, but at least we're going to have a clean slate to build fresh. But if he does, then you have your head coach, right?
Right.
So I think that's another angle to this, but what do I know? I just speak into the void once a week with my bearded friend.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see. It's just going to be compelling to see the rest of the season because, I mean, the competition isn't that great. We can debate how good or bad Stanford is, but they're not that good of a team. I mean, they're 1-4.
No,
Colorado's
they're
obviously
not
awful. UCLA could be the best team in the Pac-12, and that'll be a tough game. But like I said earlier, that'll be at home, and probably the best. I'd expect that to be a pretty good crowd, just because ASU has a good chance. If ASU is 4-4 entering that game, if they lose to Stanford, then I don't know. But has a chance to be a really good environment there. They'll still probably lose. At Wazoo is really tough. That's going to be a tough game. But then you get at home against Oregon State. That's winnable. I don't know if I would pick them to win necessarily, but maybe we get to that game and it's very winnable for ASU. And then on the road at U of A is winnable. Doesn't mean they're going to win, but the U of A's defense is, not very good, and so ASU could just win because of that. So a lot of possibilities the rest of the season, and it'll be interesting to see how different guys develop. I mean, Xavier Valdez is having a fantastic season. He's been having a fantastic season the whole season, even when a lot of his teammates were not having fantastic seasons at that time. So he can put up some really good numbers this year. And Ngata continues to get involved in the offense, had a touchdown.
Receivers are stepping up too. That's been good.
You like what you see from them. You like what you see from Ngata. Badger just continues to improve. 2 big tight ends they still have. So, and the offensive line looks like it's starting to gel a little bit. Utah game was really bad, but I think they were bringing some blitzes too in that game too. So we should see how the offensive line kind of plays the rest of the year. And, defense, they won't be playing as good of teams. So that should help, I mean, they played maybe 3 NFL quarterbacks in a row, right? With Rising. Right. I mean, maybe Rising. Rising will probably get to the NFL. He probably won't be a starter, but I could see him getting.
I feel like he's like a UDFA type of guy.
Yeah.
But I mean, he'll get a shot.
DRC.
Wait, no. Why did I say DRC? It's DRC, right? No.
DTR.
There we go. DRC.
Yeah. No, that UCLA game. That's gonna be
brutal. Yeah. So DTR, and then Tanner McKee definitely. I think.
Yeah.
He looks great. But I call.
But Stanford's so bad that Tanner McKee alone, I don't know if he'll be able to.
I referred to the Utah UCLA game as the not good enough for the Senior Bowl. So that was my finest work, so much so that I felt the need to repeat it. I was very proud of that. But that kind of shows how I feel about those guys making a splash in the NFL. Or maybe it's my disdain for Chip Kelly, and that's rubbing off.
DTR might win the Heisman, man.
But DTR is also 25 years old playing against 19-year-old corners. I don't know.
I don't think he's 25.
Maybe
okay, but that doesn't matter when winning the Heisman. They don't have an.
No, I know that's not a criteria.
He's 22.
Heisman. No, he's not 22.
Yes, he is.
Is he really?
Yes.
That guy, I feel like that dude is those Kansas forwards for Kansas basketball that used to play for that team for 7
Perry Ellis?
Yeah, a Perry Ellis.
No, I mean, he is kind of like that.
That's what I'm saying. Like you feel like he's been playing
His
college
fifth
football
year.
for 10 years.
Yeah.
But still 22, that's like 32 in college years.
No, it's not.
I don't know. It feels
Dude, he's
it feels
good,
like
man.
older.
He's good. I know you're not a Chip
His
Kelly
birthday
guy.
must be mid-October.
Yeah, we'll see. Anyway, one more thing to get to. We mentioned Matt Rule earlier. He has been canned by the Carolina Panthers, and a lot of college teams want him. You know, there's a lot of rumors about him to Nebraska, which makes sense. And I haven't seen that many rumors of him to ASU. But I'm just kind of asking, like, how would you react if ASU ended up hiring him? Let's just say he wants to come here.
I mean, he's an accomplished college football coach. If he's obviously got the name value, former NFL guy. Obviously, we were just talking about Chip Kelly. He's finally having success at UCLA. Obviously, I despise Chip Kelly, but those guys have a pretty solid pedigree of the guys who make the leap to the NFL coming back to the college ranks and having success. You see it with Jim Harbaugh of Michigan,
Steve Spurrier.
Steve Spurrier, obviously one of the biggest examples is Nick Saban.
Because Steve Spurrier was an awful NFL coach. Like,
right. And I mean, Matt Rule was an awful NFL coach.
right. Yeah.
But he was an excellent college football coach.
Yep.
And I don't think there would be I don't think there would be any objection from ASU fans, at least from me, if Matt Rule was hired to be the ASU football coach. I don't see that. I who knows if it happens, but I can tell you right now, I would not be upset. And congrats to him for heisting an NFL franchise because that buyout had to be
$40 million.
Nice. It was $40 million. He got fired 3 years into a 7-year deal. They gave him a 7
They gave him
deal.
7 years? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Fired him 3 years in, walks away with $40 million. And
That's
he
the
no
life.
longer has to coach Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield.
That is the life. Yeah. So with Rule, I agree with you. Like, if they did end up hiring, I would ultimately be happy that we got him. Because people always point to him at Baylor winning, like, I think they won 11-3. He won 10 games at Temple. I think he did it twice. And I know that you're in the American, but it's still Temple.
Yeah, it's also a track. Yeah, Temple right now is an absolute train wreck. Like,
yeah,
it doesn't matter. If you have had success everywhere you've gone at the college level, then you obviously know what you're doing. And he's left that trail of success at Temple, at Baylor. And I think whichever program is able to hire him, I mean, maybe he's like, I don't want to do this anymore. I have $40 million. I'm going to take a year.
And that's there's a thought out there that, like, since he has all that money, maybe he just waits a year. But
yeah, like
some of these coaches are just like,
if he has the itch, then yeah. If he wants to get back into it, then I mean, I hope he at least considers ASU.
Right, and they should consider him. I don't even know.
He has to be like at the top of a short list in the top 3 and not 3 or 2.
And I feel like he's someone Crow could, like, sign off on, you know?
Right.
He'd be like, okay, like, I know that this guy was successful in college ranks before. You know, not he wasn't a former client of Ray Anderson 15 years ago.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like a relative. He's like a semi-young guy for.
Yeah, 47. That's that's
for
energetic.
coaching. Yeah, like he could stick around if he has success. He could stick around for a long time. You know.
He's from Pennsylvania too, and like I feel like he's not like a Southern guy. Like he's been everywhere. You know, he's in Texas, Northeast. Like, I don't think that matters for him.
I mean, obviously, yeah. Like if there's a mutual interest there, ASU needs to do everything in its power to get Matt Rule.
The reason why I'm not thinking about Matt Rule too much is because I just feel like him to Nebraska just makes so much sense. And they can pay more money than we can. Bigger job, bigger fan base.
Yeah.
Easier to recruit
Yeah.
here.
I mean,
But
I don't see a scenario where he ends up being ASU's coach. Like, there's just
yeah,
too many other obstacles in the way. Um, if he was great, I don't see it happening though.
right.
So
Yeah. So, and the thing with Matt Rule, what I wanted to get to with me is like, if we did end up hiring in the scenario that we do, uh, I would be happy, but I would not. I would still have the reservation of like, he may not be the best guy out there though, just because he's a big name and he's won in the past in college football. That doesn't mean it will happen in the future. And maybe someone else, like a younger offensive mind, like a Dillingham or who's the guy at Coastal Carolina, Jamie Chadwell,
yeah.
or if we miss it on Dion, like whatever. If we commit to Matt Rule, then it's like okay, like I hope this guy can continue the success he had at Baylor and Temple here. Um, so we'll see. Ultimately, like I would be happy if we hired him, though. I wouldn't be like totally like 100% sold that it would work, though. I would be still a little skeptical, as I would with most coaches getting hired. But um, ultimately, like if ASU was able to pull that off, that would be awesome because look, he's a big name too, and I think like getting a big name would be just I feel like it would just be good for like the self confidence of like the ASU just fan base as a whole. Like, oh my gosh, we actually like accomplished this, you know?
Right.
Because if you
Somebody.
hire Aguano, then people like even if it does turn out to be a good hire, early on some people who don't like it will be like, oh well he was just a high school coach and yada yada and or even if you hire Dillingham, people will be like, oh he was a 32-year-old offensive coordinator, like all this and that. Like if you hire Rule, people will be like, yeah, you know, like he was awesome in college before and he was a big name. So we'll see what happens. I'd give this like a 5% chance of happening that it ends up being Rule, but you know, he doesn't need the money. I mean, he got $40 million. It's not like he's a coach making his first
That is a good point.
big
It's
move.
like one of the big things for, Nebraska or some other big school is like they can pay him more. But
Yeah.
I feel like
Auburn.
Rule is in a position to pick the best job.
Right. Yeah.
Who knows if ASU is that job, but that adds an interesting wrinkle to this that buyout and how much does that impact um the money that he's looking for or the
Yeah.
importance that he places on money.
And
But
you know, maybe like I think ASU is a better job than Georgia Tech, and I think most coaches would like ASU more. But maybe Rule like would like Georgia Tech more. I mean, he's living in Charlotte, so it's way closer to where you know all his family is and stuff. He's an East Coast guy, so maybe he would like the idea of coaching at a place like Georgia Tech more. So who knows? But uh, we'll see. Going to be much more coaching talk. Maybe
real
there'll be
quick
much
before we
less
go,
coaching. What?
yeah, before we go, how much did you put on Geno Smith to win MVP?
I should have put a lot on it, but I think the
Yeah,
Seahawks defense is going to make that an impossibility because they're so bad. So he might throw up
yeah.
2 or 3 touchdowns a game and still lose a lot of
I
games.
don't know. The NFC West is not that strong this year.
No, no.
He
The
could,
Seahawks might be the second best team in the NFC West.
yeah, he could make a little run. Who knows? My
Oh,
my
be awesome.
Eagles Super Bowl bet is looking pretty good, but
Yeah.
um, I was thinking about throwing some money on Hurts, but I didn't end up doing it. So
I don't
that's a bummer.
I feel like Hurts I feel like Josh Allen's going to end up winning it this year.
Yeah, he probably will. That's a good pick
He's
for
going to
it.
do. And I
Yeah,
feel like Hurts, like I feel like he's having a really good, like he's a good player and like he's clearly like ascended to like another level. But I also don't think like he's going like I feel like he'll have a few bumpy games here and there. Um,
but what I'm saying is for the odds he was going at before the
right, right. Oh,
season
that's true.
started,
Yeah,
I could have cashed out now for a nice little profit. He's got like the third best odds.
yeah,
So,
that's true. I mean, it's not crazy. They're gonna if they can beat Dallas.
oh, if they beat Dallas, dude, you should see their schedule after Dallas
Yeah.
after the bye. It's like Texans, Steelers.
Although
Um,
they might beat Dallas and Hurts might still not have a good game just because Dallas has a really good defense. But
yeah, that game's gonna be like 17-13.
yeah, good old NFL slugfest. But
That's not why the fans
type of
come here.
football we do. No, and you know what? That's the type of football we do not want to see with the next ASU head coach. As we wrap this episode up, we want some high flying offense that can take advantage of the local recruiting talent in the area. Does that kind of sum it up?
Yeah, Mark. Very well said.
All right. Well, this has been. Oh man, we're just a couple of goofs. This has been episode 15 of the Stomp the Bus podcast, and thanks for tuning in. As always,
For Mark Harris, I'm Robbie Ray.
just had to twist the knife. I'm Mark
Sorry,
Harris.
that
Thanks
was
for
really
listening,
sad.
and go Devils.